Good morning and welcome to our video version of the candidate workshop for the November 3rd, 2020 election. I am Denise Anderson Warren, Santa Monica City Clerk. We ask that you understand during this virtual presentation, there may be some delays due to sharing of videos and PowerPoints. So please be patient with us, and as this is a different format that none of us are really used to. So let me start out by introducing other city clerk staff that you'll be meeting with when you come to pick up your nomination papers. Vicki Newsom is the Assistant City Clerk. Esterlina Lugo is the Deputy City Clerk, and Maria Dakina-Weisner is our Administrative Analyst. So before we begin, I want to instruct you to save your questions until the end of each section. And if you look at the lower bottom of the bottom lower of the screen, you will see a Q&A box. Please submit your questions in the box, and we will answer your questions at the end of each section. And if for some reason your questions aren't answered, you can submit your questions to clerk@smgov.net, or I ask that you save them until you see us. However, if we get a large number of questions, we will create a Q&A page and we'll post the answers on smvote.org. So we encourage each of you to review the candidate guide online before you make an appointment to come in and pull your nomination papers. The information we're providing today will explain the process for becoming a candidate for elected office. As we go along, we'll prompt you to the appropriate pages in the candidate guide. Remember that the guide will be available on smvote.org. And if you have any questions after each section, again, feel free to write a question in the Q&A box as they come up. So this is going to be a lot of information. So again, we encourage you to go through the online packet and guide. Let's start with an introductory video on city governance.
In this video, we'd like to share with you important information about the form of government the City of Santa Monica operates under and the duties and responsibilities of our City Council. For candidates running for the rent control, school, or college board, please contact those department or district offices for more information. The California State Constitution provides two forms of city government. They are charter and general law. A charter city has more authority than a general law city and has the ability to tax and adopt its own policies and laws. Also, a charter city can call an election at any time if the charter so provides, whereas a general law city must adhere to state guidelines. In November of 1886, Santa Monica was incorporated as a general law city. However, in 1907, Santa Monica was granted a charter. But that charter, however, was changed in 1946 to establish the present Council City Manager government. Today, the responsibilities of the City Council balance that of the City Manager. The Council appoints the City Manager, City Attorney, and City Clerk, and in turn, the City Manager appoints all other department heads. The Council establishes local laws, sets policy, and in general, represents the public's wishes in the operation of the city. But keep in mind with charter cities, the Council must act within the city charter and state laws. The City Council meets regularly on the second and fourth Tuesday of each month, and if needed, there are additional meeting days. Meetings are open to the public, except for closed sessions. The Santa Monica City Council also convenes as a housing authority, redevelopment successor agency, public financing authority, and parking authority.
So next I want to talk about voter turnout. The city has historically had a very high voter turnout, as you can tell from the election since 2012. Next slide. The November election includes offices for the City Council, Rent Control Board, College Board, and School Board. And we will be consolidating with LA County's statewide general election. Our office will process your nomination paperwork and receive disclosure statements and campaign filings. The county will be responsible for processing voter registration records, printing and mailing of the official sample ballot, setting up polling sites, and preparing and counting ballots. Starting on page 29 in your candidate guide is a list of the services provided by the county, such as precinct maps and index to voters. Their contact information for other services are also listed. Next slide. The number of seats up for election are 4 full-term seats for City Council and 1 partial seat for City Council, 2 seats for Rent Control Board, 3 seats for College District, and 3 seats for the School District. All of the positions are 4-year terms except for the 1 City Council seat, which is a 2-year term. The current compensation for City Council members is $1,308 per month, and the mayor's salary is $1,569 per month. This is expected to increase in August, as increases annually based on the Consumer Price Index. Additionally, there are stipends for serving on the housing and parking authorities, and all council members receive medical, dental, and other benefits currently available to city employees. For information on the Rent Control, College, and School Board, please contact that agency. The contact information for these boards' offices is included in the guide. Okay, now I want to talk about eligibility of a candidate. So you must be 18 years old. You must be a resident and registered voter in the jurisdiction of the vacancy you're applying for. So for example, if you're running for City Council or Rent Control Board, then you need to be a resident and registered voter in Santa Monica. If you're running for the school or college board, then you must be a resident and registered voter of either Santa Monica or Malibu. And if you're not registered or have any doubts about where you're registered, please go to lavote.net after the presentation to check your registration status. When you meet with my staff, you will receive a packet in a white envelope. In the packet, there are several colored documents. The orange forms are mandatory and must be filed with your nomination papers. The yellow sheet is optional to be filed at the same time as filing your nomination papers. The blue form will need to be submitted when you come in to receive your nomination petitions. The deadline to turn in your paperwork is 5:00 p.m. on Friday, August 7th. The first form in your packet will be a sample nomination paper and shows you how your petition will look and how it should be completed. The actual nomination paper will be issued to you when you come into our office. I am not seeing the PowerPoint, Maria. Sorry about that. You will need to obtain a minimum of 30 signatures for registered voters in the jurisdiction during the circulation period, which is today, July 13th through August 7th. As a candidate, you may sign your own nomination papers. A voter may sign as many nomination papers as there are vacant seats. So for example, there are 2 vacant seats on the Rent Control. So a voter can sign 2 candidates' nomination papers. If they sign the 3rd candidate papers, then the signature may not be counted. Only the first 2 papers filed will be counted. And this is a good reason to file early. We encourage you to get more than the required number of signatures in case people signing are either not registered or don't live in the jurisdiction. We will issue you 2 sets of nomination papers. Currently, there's enough room for 112 signatures. If you wish to have more, please let us know, and we will issue you the shorter forms, which has room for 10 signatures. For this election only, the $1 fee for additional nomination petitions will be waived. The candidate and/or the person 18 years or older must circulate a set of papers. So only one person may circulate a set of nomination papers, and it cannot be shared by multiple circulators. Also, the petition booklet may not be separated into individual pages or photocopied for additional petitions. As far as gathering nomination signatures, for this COVID pandemic, candidates should comply with the health, safety, social distancing requirements set out in the state and county safer at home orders while gathering nomination signatures. An example would be to email or call potential nominators to notify them of a day and time when nomination papers will be available at a table set up outside a particular location, and then have the nominators arrive and sign using disposable pens while maintaining a 6-foot distance from each other and from the circulator observing the signatures. The circulator would then complete the required supporting affidavit and return the nomination papers with the original signatures to the candidate for subsequent submission to the city clerk. If the circulator is not the candidate, then remember to have the circulator complete the declaration of circulator on the back of the nomination papers before turning in your papers, or that set will be disqualified. When you return your nomination papers, we will do a check to make sure that you have at least 30 signatures and they appear to be registered in the required jurisdiction before we forward the petitions to LA County for signature verification. Okay, I'm going to continue to talk about the nomination papers. If you look on the back of the sample nomination paper, in the middle of the page, you will see a box where it says Entitled Affidavit of Nominee. In this section, you're required to print your name and then print the office you're running for. In the box, you'll print your name in all caps as you would like it to appear on the ballot. Print the ballot designation as you would like it to appear on the ballot. And I'll go over the ballot designation after I finish talking about the nomination papers. You'll indicate your gender and print your residence address. This information will not be public. When you turn in your nomination papers, you will need to pay the $25 filing fee to be paid by check or credit card, and you will be given an oath of allegiance on the back of the nomination paper. The oath basically states that if elected, you will serve and you will sign the oath in our presence. And if an emergency arises and you cannot bring in your own nomination papers, please contact us to make arrangements to file your papers. If you file early enough but fall short of the required signatures, one supplemental petition will be issued to collect additional signatures. That supplemental petition also needs to be filed by the end of the filing period at 5 p.m. on Friday, August 7th. This is another reason to file your nomination papers early. Are there any questions? I see that there's one question in the Q&A box. When will we be able to see who else has pulled papers? We will post, so when people pull their nomination papers, at the end of each day, we update that list and we turn that in. And the reason you can't see who the other participants are in the group is because this is not it's not that open form. Okay, let me continue. So on the second orange form in your folder will be the ballot designation worksheet. When trying to determine your ballot designation, please review election code 13107, found on the second page in your form. It defines ballot designation as no more than 3 words designating either the candidate's current principal profession, vocation, or occupation, or their profession, vocation, or occupation during the calendar year preceding the filing of nomination documents. Some good examples of ballot designations are incumbent, registrar, professor, writer, senator. Unacceptable designations include casual or occasional activity, pro forma professions, and statuses, such as activist or honorary professor. The use of adjectives such as outstanding teacher, leading journalist, and expert plumber are also not acceptable. To help determine your ballot designation, please complete the ballot designation worksheet and review additional regulations in your candidate guide on page 12. In previous elections, candidates only had to justify their first choice. This year, candidates must justify all designations. The worksheet must be completed and turned in with your nomination papers. If you're running for City Council Rent Control Board, there will be 2 white sheets in your packet called the Candidate Information Sheet. This document is not required for the school board and the college board candidates. Local ordinance requires that any person running for city office must provide a candidate information sheet to potential signers outlining the nomination process. You will see that the information sheet is in English and Spanish, and you must provide this information in both languages. You must make these documents available either by displaying them prominently at the same location where signatures are being gathered or offer copies. For this election only, we will provide additional copies for each petition. We will now show a short video recapping the nomination papers and candidate information sheet.
One of your very first steps as a candidate for election is to qualify to run for office by the city clerk. To do this, you will need to get the signatures of 100 valid registered voters in the jurisdiction that you are running in. For City Council and Rent Control Board candidates, this would be Santa Monica voters. If you are running for school board or college board, then your signatures can be from registered voters in Santa Monica and Malibu. Also, if you're circulating papers for city offices such as the City Council or Rent Control Board, then local ordinances require candidates to provide the candidate information sheet to voters. On the back of the nomination paper, you will designate how you want your name to appear on the election ballot, including no more than 3 words that describe your principal vocation, occupation, or profession. You will also include your gender and residence address, but your address will not appear on the ballot.
So I just want to clarify, even though the video says 100 signatures, for this election, for health and safety reasons, the required number of signatures has been reduced to 30 signatures for the November 3rd, 2020 election filing period. And before I turn it over to the Assistant City Clerk, I see that there are some questions. So we have is it possible to see who else is in the meeting? The answer is no. And then the next question, is the abbreviation SM acceptable when the nominator uses the abbreviation? I would ask that you save that question because I'm not sure, Bob, exactly what that is referring to. But definitely either email it or we will definitely answer it for when you come in to see us. The other question, how is an open meeting candidate workshop? Okay, it's just the platform that we're using. We are not you're not able to see who's on the meeting. Okay, so I'll now turn it over to the Assistant City Clerk.
The next orange form that will be in your packet is the candidate statement form. This form must be returned with your nomination papers. Each candidate may prepare a statement of qualifications that will appear in the county's official sample ballot mailed to all residents. A candidate statement is a 200-word statement of what you want the voters to know about you. It may include your name, age, occupation, and a brief description of your education and qualifications. Most cities charge candidates to print and translate the candidate statement. For the school and college board do not charge candidates for these services. For this election only, the city will pay the estimated base cost for printing and translating the candidate statements for city candidates. If the final cost exceeds the estimate, then candidates may be charged the remaining cost. Next slide, please. This is the county's candidate statement form. Complete the information at the top of the form. At the bottom, you will complete your statement in the space provided on the form by either typing directly onto the form or copying and pasting your statement onto the form. You may also attach a printout of the statement to the form. Next slide, please. On the back of the form, check the box indicating that you would like your statement to be printed in English. The county will automatically translate your statement in Spanish for the Spanish version of the sample ballot. Sign, date, and include your phone number. Then initial as indicated and submit with your nomination papers. Statements will be typed in the official sample ballot using Times New Roman font and 11-point size. Statements will be printed in uniform type, style, and spacing using block paragraphs in single-space format. Text submitted indented or centered will be typed in block paragraph form. Entire statements in all capital letters are not acceptable. Indentations, circles, stars, dots, italics, and or bullets cannot be accommodated. However, you may use dashes or hyphens. In previous elections, the city limited the number of enhanced words to 25. However, the county does not have this limit. Enhanced words that are printed in boldface type, underscored, and or capitalized are to be clearly indicated. The pronoun I is not counted as an enhanced word. State and local codes limit the statement to your own qualifications. You may not refer to your opponents or include your own party affiliation or membership in partisan political organizations. For more election code sections on candidate statements, can be found on the guidebook on page 25. Now we will go over some word count guidelines to assist you in preparing your statement and ensuring you are within 200 words. Punctuation marks are not counted. Symbols such as the ampersand or and the hashtag sign or the number pound or pound sign are not considered punctuation, and each symbol is counted as one word. The words I, a, the, and an are counted as individual words. Proper nouns such as geographic names and names of persons or things are considered one word. For example, Gus Enright would be considered one word. City of Los Angeles would be considered one word. And the Dalai Lama would be considered one word. Abbreviations or acronyms for a word, phrase, or expression are counted as one word. Examples are UCLA, PTA, USMC, or LAPD. Hyphenated words that appear in any generally available dictionary published in the United States at any time within the 10 calendar years immediately preceding the election for which the words are counted shall be considered as one word. Each part of all other hyphenated words shall be counted as a separated word. Date shall be counted as one word, whether alpha, numerical, or numerical. For example, 04/10/1990 or April 10, 1990. Numeric combinations are counted as one word, such as 1973, 13.5, 73, 5%, or number 14. Monetary amounts such as $1 million are counted as one word. However, $4 million, where million is written out, will be counted as two words. Telephone fax numbers are counted as one word, and internet websites or email addresses are also counted as one word. Your candidate statement must be completed and filed with us at the same time you turn in your nomination papers. We are asking that before you come in to turn in your paperwork, to email your candidate statement to clerk@smgov.net. When you bring in your documents, we will review the statement and count the words. If you go over the word limit, then you will have the opportunity to make minor changes before we formally accept the form. The statement will be printed exactly as submitted, so please check for errors. Once the form is date stamped, it may not be changed. Candidate statements become a public record immediately following the August 7th filing deadline and may be withdrawn by 5 p.m. on the next working day after the close of the nomination period, which is Monday, August 10th. Samples of past candidate statements are available on our website at smvote.org in our elections archive. Are there any questions about the candidate statement? There's a question here about where do we make an appointment to meet with you and get the packet. You may call our office or email us. You can call our office at 310-845-8411, and we will get that information to you, or you can email us. This information is also at smvote.org as well.
Nikki, may I repeat the phone number for them?
Yes, please.
It's 310-458-8211.
Sorry about that. There's also a question here, is also retired or former occupation acceptable when listing your occupation? Can someone else answer that, please?
It can be used, but there's very specific instructions, and that's on the ballot designation sheet. And there's a whole section that addresses the word retired.
There's another question here about the phone number. Again, that's 310-458-8211. Okay, I think I got all the questions. All right. The next form we will discuss is the Internet Authorization Form. We will be posting your name as you would like it to appear on the ballot designation and candidate statement and photo on smvote.org. Our office receives numerous requests for candidates' contact information from the media and voters, and they often refer to our website. So if you want your information as a qualified candidate on your website, on our website, then please complete this form and file it with your nomination papers. After qualifying, we will ask you for your headshot to post on the website. I will now turn the presentation over to our Deputy City Clerk to discuss the next set of forms.
Good morning, this is Esther. So I'm going to go over the first form, which is in your packet. It is the yellow sheet, and it's called the Code of Fair Campaign Practices form. This is an optional form for you to file, and if you file it, you're just stating that you will abide by campaign practices as defined in the form. Since this is a public document, voters will know if you do or do not submit this form and promise to run a fair campaign. Next slide, please. So the Fair Political Practices Commission helps public officials comply with their obligations under the Political Reform Act, while also improving the public's access to information about how the political process works. The FEPC leads the charge to provide transparency, fairness, and integrity to California's political system. The FEPC responds annually to over 20,000 requests for advice. I'm going to go over the Statement of Economic Interest form. If you are running for City Council or rent control, a Form 700 will be in your packet. The supplemental candidate packet online will have links to reference pamphlets, FAQs, and a fact sheet for reporting gifts for this form. For those of you running for the College Board and the school district, if you are a successful candidate, then the district office staff will ask you to file this form once you assume office. The Statement of Economic Interest, or the Form 700, is a statement of your personal income, assets as it applies to the jurisdiction that you are running for. This document is a state requirement for state and local candidates, government officials, and employees. Investments, interest in real property, and business positions held on the date of filing your declaration of candidacy must be reported. In addition, income including loans, gifts, and travel payments received during the 12 months before filing your declaration of candidacy is also reportable. I'm going to request that you look at your disclosure category in the conflict of interest resolution to see specifically what you are required to disclose. This is a public document and will be made available to all the voters. Now, the cover sheet of this form is in orange, so the economic interest form must be completed and turned in with your nomination papers to the city clerk's office. You may also fill out a PDF form that can be found on the FEPC's website. You would print it, sign it, and return it with your nomination papers. The Fair Political Practices Commission offers advice and is available to answer questions by phone or email, and their contact information and website are on your forms. I don't know, do we have any questions? Denise?
I do not see any questions.
Okay, great, thank you. So moving on to the next slide, please. So even if you do not plan to establish a campaign committee, as a candidate, you will have campaign statement filing responsibilities. So let's begin going over the different forms. In the packet, the Form 501 will be in an orange sheet. This is the candidate intention statement. A candidate must file this form prior to solicitation or receipt of any contributions or expenditures of any personal funds on behalf of their candidacy. Once completed, this form must be filed with your nomination papers by August 7th with the City Clerk's office. The next form in your online packet is the Form 410. This is the Statement of Organization. If you intend to spend or raise $2,000 or more, then you must file a Form 410. This form must be filed within 10 days of reaching either threshold. Please keep in mind this form must be thoroughly completed to avoid it being rejected. File the original form with the Secretary of State along with the $50 payment, and a copy you would file with the City Clerk's office. After filing this form, the Secretary of State will send you a packet with a committee identification number, and the City Clerk's office will send you a login identification number and password for access to NetFile, the city's electronic filing system, to e-file your campaign statement. And the next slide, please. The next form I'm going to just go over is the Form 460. This is the committee's campaign statement. It isn't in any packet because campaign statements must be filed electronically using NetFile. The form is used by all committees to report campaign activity for all semi-annual and pre-election statements. To assist you in completing this form, please refer to Manual 2 for local candidates, and a link to this will be in your online packet. Next slide, okay. The deadlines associated with the filing of the form are included in the online packet. If you already have a committee established, then the first semi-annual report covers the first half of the calendar year, which is January 1st through June 30th, and that form would be due on July 31st. As it gets closer to the election, the filing periods become shorter. The next filing period is for the first pre-election report, which would cover the next 3 months. That would be July 1st through September 19th and would be due September 24th. The second pre-election report would cover the next month, which is September 20th through October 17th, and would be due October 22nd. Also, during the 90 days prior to the election, you must report any late contributions received from a single source or made by the committee of $1,000 or more using the Form 497, and this would be between August 5th through November 3rd. Non-monetary late contributions must also be reported within 48 hours using the same form. The Form 497 may be filed by email, fax, overnight mail because of the shorter reporting time. But because City Hall will be closed to the public, we do not recommend having someone drop off the statements in person. The next semi-annual report covers the rest of the calendar year, which would be October 18th through December 31st, and would be due February 2nd of 2021. Again, the Form 460 must be filed electronically using NetFile. There's one-on-one training offered by NetFile. We will also be hosting an FPPC webinar for candidates and treasurers on August 19th at 1 p.m., so please mark your calendars. And the links to register for the training will be at fppc.ca.gov under their training for local candidates and treasurers, or at smvote.org. We highly encourage you to attend with your treasurers. Non-filers will be reported to the FPPC, and late filers will be charged late fees. Do we have any questions, Denise?
There was a question, but I answered it.
Okay.
The person asked about inheritance or distribution from someone else trust. I told them to check with the FPPC for guidance on that. And there was a question separate of not dealing with this, but there's been several questions people have asked if it's okay for the nominators to put SM instead of Santa Monica, and that is acceptable. That was it. Go ahead, Esther.
Okay, so let's move on. Now I'm going to go over, there's a local contribution limit, so I'm going to go over the law regarding the local contribution limit for City Council and rent control board candidates only. The city has a limit of $340 per person and per election cycle. The limit is based on the Consumer Price Index and is adjusted every 5 years. The next increase will occur on July 1st of 2021. The text of the law can be found in the reference section of your guides on pages 48 and 49. Please review the sections on aggregation of payments, in-kind contributions, and family contributions from a spouse will be treated as separate contributions, and minors cannot contribute to committees. Next slide, please. Okay, so now let's talk about filing requirements for candidates who are not establishing a committee. If you are not planning to establish a committee during your campaign, then you would only need to file the Forms 501 and the Form 470. We suggest you file your Form 470 with your nomination papers, but if not, that you file it no later than September 24th, which is the deadline for the first pre-election statement. When completing the Form 470, you are declaring that you are not planning to spend or raise $2,000 or more during the calendar year. If you file the Form 470 and later change your mind and decide to raise funds, then you may do so by filing the Form 410, which I discussed earlier. You will also be required to file the Form 470 supplemental and provide notice within 48 hours of receiving or spending $2,000 or more. Again, if you have any specific questions on what you need to disclose, please contact FPPC, as we cannot advise you on this matter. So if we don't have any more questions, we'll watch a quick video on election sign placement, and I will turn it over to the administrative analyst to discuss election regulation.
Candidates must adhere to regulations governing placement of campaign signs, banners, posters, and flyers. As a candidate, you are prohibited from putting election material of any kind on public property. That means lampposts, hydrants, bridges, overpasses, freeway ramps, or trees on public streets. For example, the grass medians on streets such as Olympic and San Vicente are public property. The space between the sidewalk and the curb is also public property. Signs placed in violation of these regulations will be removed by the city, and you may also be fined. Another important note, on Election Day, campaign materials may not be within 100 feet of a polling location. Polling sites will be monitored for violations. Remember, if you don't have to ask a landowner for permission to put a sign on their property, then the site you're considering is probably public property and off limits.
Good morning, this is Maria Dakanai-Wisner again, analyst for the City Clerk's Office. So we show this video because after the election, Public Works staff spends a significant amount of time and resources removing signs throughout the city. So please remind your supporters not to post signs on public property and to remove them after Election Day. In the candidate guide that will be online in your supplemental candidate packet is a reference section starting on page 45. I will briefly go over important election code sections, and I'll be jumping to different sections, but they are listed in alphabetical order in the reference list if you need to look them up later. On page 49 is a California Business and Professions Code section prohibiting the transmission of text message advertising to promote a political purpose or objective, but with some exceptions. Please read this code in its entirety. On page 56 of the guide is information regarding printed literature and mass mailing. A mass mailing is over 200 substantially similar pieces of mail sent through the U.S. Post Office. The California Government Code requires mass mailings to include the sender's identification to be printed on the outside of the literature, with a font color that contrasts the background so that the information is legible, and be no less than 6-point type. This code is enforced by the FPPC, and if anyone violates this code, then complaints should be directed to that agency. If you plan to provide voters with a simulated ballot, which is a reproduction of the official ballot or sample ballot, then it must contain specific language stating that it is an unofficial ballot. The exact language that needs to be on this document can be found on page 60 of your candidate guide. Starting on page 56 are sections pertaining to the use of government seals. It's a misdemeanor to reproduce official seals in your campaign literature or mass mailings that mislead voters into believing that the document was authorized by public officials. Similarly, do not use images of city employees in uniform, such as police officers or firefighters, in campaign materials. Our office appreciates any reminders that you can pass along to your supporters to register and vote. You may refer voters to register online at the Secretary of State's website at registertovote.ca.gov and apply for a vote-by-mail ballot from the LA County Clerk's website at lavote.net. Due to COVID-19, the county will be mailing vote-by-mail ballots to all registered voters, regardless of their permanent vote-by-mail status for this election. So it's important to get the message out to register or update registrations by the deadline to make sure voters get their ballot in the mail. Now let's watch our last video about Election Day.
If you change your mind about running for office, you can withdraw your candidacy up to and including the deadline date for filing nomination papers. After that date, your name will still appear on the ballot on Election Day. If you established a campaign committee, then you will still need to file the required forms and reports as if you had run for office. The polls open at 7 in the morning and close at 8 in the evening. No electioneering is allowed within 100 feet of a polling station. Polling sites will be monitored for electioneering and other violations. Successful candidates will be sworn into office in a city council meeting in early December. You will continue to have campaign statement reporting requirements with the city clerk's office through the end of your term and until your campaign committee is terminated. If you did not win your election and you did not establish a committee, then your filing requirement is complete. Also, if you did not win and establish a committee, then you will continue to have reporting requirements until your committee is terminated. Non-filers will be reported to the Fair Political Practices Commission. If you are planning to run again and you have money left over, then you must redesignate your committee after the election. Or you can use those funds to pay off debt or give them to charity as provided for in the Political Reform Act.
So despite vote-by-mail ballots being mailed to all voters, the county will still have a few vote centers for voters that need in-person assistance. So we wanted to mention a few more things about electioneering. On page 58 are sections pertaining to this activity. Electioneering means the visible display or audible dissemination of information advocating for or against any candidate or measure on the ballot within 100 feet of a polling place, a vote center, an election official's office, such as ours, or satellite locations, such as the LA County Clerk's branch offices. Examples of electioneering are wearing T-shirts supporting a candidate or measure, or circulating a nomination or initiative petition less than 100 feet of the prohibited locations that I mentioned. It's also considered electioneering to solicit the vote of someone in the process of voting by mail. Your guide also has sections on prohibiting vandalism at polling places and misdemeanor violations on interfering with ballot processing and violating voters' privacy that we ask you to read up on. For those of you running for city council or rent control, let's say that you won the election. On page 61 of the guide is another local law that applies to council and rent board members, called the Oaks Initiative or Taxpayer Protection Act. This was adopted by voters in November 2000 and amended in 2016. Its requirements affect elected officials and prohibit officials who have approved or voted to approve a public benefit, such as a contract, from receiving a personal or campaign advantage from the recipient of that benefit. The recipient of the benefit includes the applicant and anyone who is an officer in or has more than a 10% interest in the business entity. The time restriction for this law is 2 years from the time that the city public official leaves office, or 6 years after conferring the public benefit, whichever is first. So if you become a successful candidate, then this is something that you will need to track for yourself. So I'll stop here and see if anyone has any questions on election codes.
I do not see any questions.
Okay. So here are important dates for July and August, and a calendar will be in your packet, in your guide, and smvote.org. The most important thing that we want you to remember is that 5 p.m. on Friday, August 7th, is the last day to file your nomination papers. And if you've already filed your paperwork, then this is also the last day to withdraw your candidacy if you change your mind. 5 p.m. on August 10th is the last day to withdraw candidate statements if you would like it to be excluded from being printed in the official sample ballot. If incumbents do not file by August 7th, then the deadline is extended 5 additional days for non-incumbents only to August 12th. August 13th is when the Secretary of State holds the drawing to determine the order that names will appear on the ballot, and we will email all candidates who submit papers of the results. And these are important dates for the rest of the year. One important date for all of you, is the second date, September 24th. Regardless of whether or not you establish a campaign committee, you must file either a Form 460 or Form 470 by the state. And again, that's 460 for those with campaign committees and 470 for those without. Going back to the top of the slide, if you don't qualify during the regular nomination period, you have another opportunity to run as a write-in candidate from September 8th to October 27th. The process is the same, except that you will not be submitting the candidate statement form. The vote by mail period starts October 5th until the 27th, and October 19th is the voter registration deadline. If you establish a campaign committee, then the second pre-election statements are due on October 22nd, and semi-annual statements are due February 2nd, 2021. Election day is November 3rd, and the swearing-in ceremony will take place in December and most likely be a special city council meeting on the 8th. Are there any questions on election deadlines?
I do not see any.
Okay, so in the packet that you'll be picking up from our office, the second to the last sheet will be a nominee's checklist to make sure that your paperwork is in order before you come in. Remember, the orange forms are mandatory, the yellow form is optional, and all of the forms must be completed and filed at the same time you file your nomination petitions. And then the last form in the packet will be a blue receipt acknowledging the information that we covered in this workshop and when we meet in person, and declares that you are currently a registered voter for the office that you're applying for. So now I will turn it back to the city clerk to wrap up our presentation.
So before I was going to ask if there's any other questions. I wanted to respond to some questions that we've received, not necessarily associated with this. So one of the questions that has come up quite often over the Q&A is if the nomination papers can be printed out and then the signatures turns in. And the answer is no. You have to come and make an appointment and meet with us in order to issue the nomination papers, it will require a wet signature. So the person who is collecting the signatures, that's why I gave the example of a safe way to collect signatures. So you will have to get wet signatures of 30, registered voters that are in the jurisdiction, and you will bring that back with the rest of your nomination papers when you submit that to our office. So yes, it still requires that we issue the nomination papers and that you still require to get an original signature. Okay. So I don't know if I didn't see any other questions that were different than that. So I just want to remind you, things to remember, that when filing your nomination papers, please complete and review all of the forms. Make an appointment to turn in your nomination documents. The documents cannot be turned in batches, and they can't be partially filled. You want to email your candidate statement before you come in to clerk@smgov.net, and that's before you come and bring in your nomination papers. I encourage you to file your nomination papers well before the 5 p.m. on August 7th deadline. If you run out of time to review your documents, then we will have to clock the documents in as is, and you won't have the opportunity or a chance to make any corrections. So that's why you want to file early. Remember the elections do's and don'ts. They're in the guide. Please write legibly on the blue form when you come in and pick up your nomination papers. And finally, this year, because of budget reductions, City TV will not be filming candidate forums. The League of Women Voters of Santa Monica will be contacting qualifying candidates to provide candidate forums and other outreach opportunities. So if there's any other questions, Susan, please repeat your method for collecting signatures safely. One of the examples that I gave was you can send out an email, set up a table, have people come and fill out, schedule time for people to come and sign the nomination papers, give them a disposable pen, make sure that you social distance, and then you or your representative collecting the signatures can return that to you, the candidate, and then you would submit that when you come into the office. It looks like there was a couple of other questions. Okay, so Susan, is the presentation being recorded? Yes, it will be available this afternoon. It will be on smvote.org. And I want to tell everybody, if you go to smvote.org, that is the location where you will have all of your reference documents, all of the campaign information, and you want to go there. That's where everything election related to 2020, that's where you want to go. And secondly, can circulators print their papers at home? No. All of the paper, we will give you the nomination papers. As we said, we're waiving the fee this year, so we can provide you with additional nomination papers. So we can go over that when you come in. And the phone number, the city's phone number for the city clerk's office is 310-458-8211. Or if you want to make an appointment, you can either call the number 310-458-8211 or send an email to clerk@smgov.net. Are there other questions? The legal reason that you can't print at home is because it requires the clerk to issue the papers, and we do not have, even though the Secretary of State said that you can issue documents digitally, you have to have an encrypted, secured system, and we don't have that. So the only method that we have to issue is to do them in person. And was there another? So if I missed any questions, I apologize. Please send it to clerk@smgov.net or save it when you come in to pull your nomination papers. So again, thank you all for listening. Good luck. And remember, this workshop will be available along with all the election documents, as I said, at smvote.org. Thank you. Have a good day.